Yay! We're live. Welcome everyone to Opening the Bedroom Doors. We're talking about opening the back door today. That means we're going to talk about all things anal. Before we begin, this is Gretchen Lee, and Gretchen is awesome. You're going to get to know more about them after we do a tiny little chair boogie, okay? This is just a way for you to shift your day, do a little boogie, point your fingers. If you're like, I don't dance, I just do finger moves, whatever it is that you want. But here we go. Have you heard the new Missy Elliott song? This is what this is. Gretchen, you're good at bed dancing.
Yeah. We'll practice.
I'm throwing it back.
Middle finger flip. Get up off my
You're doing mostly that face dancing.
Okay.
The
Yeah. A lot of dancing. A lot of elbows here.
Awesome. Welcome everyone to Opening the Bedroom Doors. My name is Jessie Fresh. I'm an intimacy coach, and I decided to have this show because too many people were asking me or telling me that they did not know what they wanted or needed or desired because they didn't know what existed. So I decided to open up my little black book and contact all the sexperts that I know so that we can have conversations about the things that are happening behind closed doors that we don't really talk about. So that's what this is all about. We're going to open our bedroom doors. We're going to hang out in our bedrooms. We're going to open up to these topics so that your mind can feel more open and ready to embrace trying new things. And today we are talking about opening the back door. I've had many other guests that I've interviewed that when I ask them ooh, what's the best sexy thing that you've been getting into lately? And they've talked about anal play as the highlight of their life. And that made me think, okay, we got to talk about this. This is such a topic where it's either hush hush, we don't talk about this at all, or loud and proud all about it. So I wanted to invite Gretchen here. And Gretchen and I know each other primarily through the connection of teaching with Shebop. Gretchen is the education coordinator for Shebop. And so I see Gretchen often when I teach for Shebop online. And we talk a lot because of coordinating classes and things like that. But my first introduction to Gretchen was I went to a kink munch where Gretchen was teaching, and Gretchen was teaching about blowjobs. And it was such an entertaining, light, giggly class on blowjobs. I had an amazing time. And from then on, I was like, they're cool. I want to be their friend. They're awesome. And then you were announced as the education coordinator. So it just happened to work out that way.
Yeah.
Will you introduce yourself to people, let them know? I see someone in the comments say, yay, anal! Yay!
Yeah, so my name's Gretchen Lee. As Jessie mentioned, I use they and she pronouns. I am the education coordinator for Shebop. So if you've been coming to any Shebop classes, you may have likely seen my face over and over again from the room right outside this door. This is my bedroom. Welcome. I share this small apartment with my partner. She is out on a run right now, but she'll be back soon to bug us. On top of being the education coordinator, I do my own sex ed. As Jessie also mentioned, I've been teaching for 4 years or so now. And I do teach a lot of fun skills-based classes like advanced fellatio, etc. But I also teach a lot about health and bodies. I am a certified personal trainer, and I coach strength and conditioning and CrossFit. I compete in Olympic weightlifting.
Cool.
So if you have questions about that, or you are really seeking a personal trainer at this time, find me after class. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about butts tonight. I find right now in this quarantine world we're living in, it is so great to get to be even in a virtual room full of people and talk about fun things. I find myself feeling so energized afterwards. So glad we're all here to talk about this tonight.
Awesome. I thought you were going to say something about like this time is making all of our butts a little bit more clenched than normal. That's that could be a possibility. So anyone that's watching, let's all take a deep breath and just relax it a little bit. It's like a conscious thing.
Yeah. Everybody take a deep breath and relax your butt. I'm here for it.
Yay. Easier said than done sometimes. We'll talk about that too.
Yeah.
So when you begin to think of like all things anal, what do you feel shows up for you?
Yeah. What shows up for me? I think about like all of the questions I've been asked about butt stuff, and I think about like my own journey through exploring butts. And I think it's like, for one, it's a misunderstood area of the body, the ass. And when I teach like a full class on anal sex, I go really deep into anatomy, like full nerd zone. I have a hand-drawn picture of a rectum that I love, as big smiley face in the middle. And so like, I won't, delve us into all of that, but I think it's really like, we don't include anal anatomy and rectal anatomy and all of that in our like understanding of our genitals. And so, asses aren't used for reproduction. So we don't learn them at a young age. And even in pleasure anatomy, you have to really seek it out to understand kind of what's going on in there. Mm-hmm. And so like, as you were saying when we were chatting before, there are a lot of myths and misconceptions about anal sex, and some people are like, no, I would never. And then some people are like, yes, give me all the anal. And there's just like, it's a wide range of opinions and feelings and like deep, strong, visceral type feelings about it. So that's kind of what comes up for me, is just thinking about like the breadth of experience out there about anal play and how it is like keeping everyone from trying it. Because there's lots of fun to be had,
Yeah. That's why this was like focused on anal play, not just necessarily anal sex, because I think that's what people think anal play is, that it's like insertion. But I want to expand that, like, just playing on the outside could be the thing that is labeled anal sex as well. Yeah. So anything on, in, or around.
Yes.
Yeah. And I want to kind of dispel some myths around like, what is it not?
Yeah. Whew. What is it not? I mean, there are a lot of myths about anal sex, and there's a lot of fears about anal sex. And some of them could be true. Things like the big ones that I hear a lot about anal and the reasons why people are fearful to try it. One is that it's painful, and two is that it's messy. And both of those things can be true. And so, as an educator and someone who has my own personal experience, I'm not going to come in and say like, those things are totally false. It's never painful and it's never messy, because we're dealing with an area of the body that doesn't self-lubricate, that often has really tight muscles and brittle tissue. And like, yeah, that's a great opportunity for something to be painful, for sure. It doesn't have to be painful though. And if you are it should only be painful if you want it to be painful, like most kinds of sex. Like, you should get to choose the pain that you're in. And anal sex falls into that category for sure. Any kind of anal play. And the second, with it being messy, same thing. Like, if you are just a cavalier with whatever you're eating at whatever time of the day, and then you think like, I think I'll have some deep anal penetration and see what happens, like, you might end up with a little mess on your hands for sure. I can't promise you that it's not going to be messy, but there are ways to mitigate the mess, and to just be prepared for it. And like things we can learn about our own anatomy to understand better, like why things are messy sometimes and not other times. So like, yeah, there's some reasons why people avoid it. They might be true, but we can figure out some workarounds.
Sure. One thing I wanted to touch on too is like, for the people that really love anal, but they're like, we are not talking about this. Like, this is not, like, it's more on the secrecy side. And I just was thinking of the things that anal isn't. And if you enjoy any kind of anal stimulation, it doesn't change your sexual orientation.
Yeah.
I wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
As like, it just means that that's another pleasure center on your body that has a lot of nerves, and yeah, it feels
Absolutely.
like another clitoris for myself. Yeah. Awesome. So I see some people chatting going, hey, hi. I love this. The expansion of play doesn't have to be penetration. Yeah. Awesome. If you're liking this, if you want to say hi, please interact in the chat. I love being able to interact with you all and get to gauge what you're learning and ask any questions that show up for you as well. So how do people engage in this?
Like how to get started?
Well, I guess like let's first talk about how people feel when they engage in this, and then maybe how to get started.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the person for sure. Anal play, I've heard like from people that are really comfortable with anal play, often like the words that come up are things like pleasure and joy and stimulation, like all the kind of normal or hopeful sex words, the things that we would hope to hear that people are feeling during any kind of sex, that you can derive a lot of physical pleasure and a lot of emotional pleasure from anal play. I would say, actually, like while I'm on that topic, emotional stimulation and connection is a huge thing that I hear coming out of anal play, that like oftentimes folks think that they're the only one that feels that way, but I do hear it a lot, and I've experienced it myself too, that like delving into an area that is pretty sensitive and that we don't always have as straightforward of an experience of like, this is how you have anal sex. It is supposed to feel like this. You do X, Y, Z. Exactly. Like it forces us to communicate a little bit more.
Yeah.
It forces us to slow down and talk to our partners, or consider to ourselves, if you're self-stimulating, thinking about like, what does feel good and how much lube do I actually need? And like, how slow is slow enough? And considering those questions and those answers can open you up to a lot more emotional connection and a deeper sort of feeling on that sense, which I think is something underrated and really beautiful about anal play for sure. But physically, totally like your normal joy, pleasure, euphoria, all of those great things. Also though, like if you're delving into something that feels taboo for you, there's excitement in that. There's some kind of like dirty naughtiness, which is really fun. Pushing physical and emotional limits can also have that kind of like excitement feeling. So it's a great like addition in that way.
That's such a great answer. I didn't really think of it can feel like steering a ship or something with the emotional navigation.
Yeah.
Needing to be a lot of patience. Yeah.
A lot of patience, a lot of connection. And then I think like moving through an experience where you need to stay present and connected is a really beautiful thing. It's so easy to become disconnected from your body during sex. And like, not that isn't a possibility in anal play for sure. But hopefully, if we're having good, satisfying anal experiences, it asks us to be really present in our bodies throughout the whole thing.
For sure. Yeah. I just had like a memory flash of like lots of really intentional breathing, lots of like care, lots of like pep talking myself of being like, it's all right. Just like take your time, go your pace. Like it's okay. Yeah. So that kind of segues into like, okay, what do people feel like they would need to engage in this? And I guess I just touched on like some of the emotional and physiological stuff a little bit, like breathing, relaxing, kind of like having conversation with whoever you're with of like, there's no rush.
Yeah.
We got this. Yeah.
Some kind of sense of safety for sure.
Yeah.
Emotional and physical. Like I definitely know people who are some like advanced anal practitioners who can pull off anal quickie and like, you know, like no prep, let's just do this thing, which is great and hot. But even within that, one would assume and hope that the way those folks have gotten to perhaps that level is because they've put in the work of like understanding what safety feels like and what emotional connection feels like and how the experience is going to go, feeling prepared in that way. For beginners, and, intermediate players too, whoever, a lot of things that people like to have on hand are lube. Big one. Like lube is underrated. I don't think I will ever talk about anything without talking about lube. It just, but having lube on hand and like spit just doesn't cut it, like real ass lube.
I love that brand.
Something you want to have on hand for sure.
Oh my God, wait, real ass lube.
We should make it.
Got it. I just got the own joke and pun.
We should market that.
Yeah.
Let's make a product. But like some kind of lube that is a good lube that is safe on people's bodies that you like, great to have on hand, and you should have lots of it. And then some cleanup materials if you want. I know for myself that always makes me feel like I can relax and allow whatever to happen if I have like baby wipes on hand, like some sort of way that I know like when our experience is over, this is what's going to happen and we can continue on with our lives instead of like, if we're scared about mess or pain, and then like I think the fear amplifies if we think that experience is like if one of those things happens or another fear you might have, if that comes up, it's just going to cut everything. And then like, ooh, now we're like, now I'm just like stuck with whatever happened. Mm-hmm. So being prepared and understanding like what might increase that feeling of safety and comfort should your worst fears come true. So that then, like even your worst fear is not a big deal. Like we're going to be okay. We can keep moving. So some kind of cleanup tool, some kind of lube. And then if you're going to be playing with fingers, a lot of folks like having gloves on hand. Literally gloves on your hand, so that then you can like use your fingers in whatever way you want, keep your lube wet and slippery because it won't soak into your gloves, and then just take your gloves off when you're done with them. And again, kind of continue the scene in whatever way you want to, instead of having to like take a big break to wash your hands and come back to what you were doing.
Mm-hmm. I think of gloves as like a very underrated sex toy. Because the texture of them is so smooth, like that with lube is just like, it's way softer than our fingers can ever be. So that being a part of that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And someone mentioned in the chat that coconut oil is their favorite lube. That's great if it works for you. As you sexperts in the chat probably already know, just don't want to use coconut oil if you're using any kind of latex or polyisoprene barrier. If you're using nitrile gloves, coconut oil is probably fine. But if you are using things like condoms or latex gloves, keep your oil away from them if you want it to maintain a solid barrier. Got it. Look out for the safety here.
You also, thank you. You also touched on like something that I've had, or a conversation that I've had with clients of like when you're taking more risk in your sex life, you can prepare for it. And then one of the ways you can prepare is by having like the plan B. Like, okay, if our intention is to have like penetrative anal sex tonight, and for some reason that just doesn't end up happening, what can be your plan B that is like the easy go-to that feels really good, that it doesn't mean that you failed. It just means that like, here's our next course.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's huge. I recently taught a class on fisting too. And that's
a big 45-minute class on fisting.
It's a quickie. In and out,
Yeah.
But those are like anal sex and fisting are the two big ones, although we should probably have a plan B for any kind of sex. But like, especially those two things are things that like our brains and bodies are likely to be on very different pages about our goals. Like if you have a goal that is set on your body doing something for you, like that might not be a great goal. Having a like, we are going to have the 8-inch dildo inside of this ass. Like that's quite a goal. And like, if you are someone who can manage goals by being like, goals make me feel excited, and if I don't get there, whatever, like, sure, that's awesome. Have your own thing. But if it is like a plan, then that is what you are going to do, and anything else is failure, then like that's setting you up for kind of a bad experience. So instead being like, it is a big fantasy of mine to fit this 8-inch dildo inside of this ass. And so tonight I want to like see how far we can get while maintaining comfort. Like that might not be the sexiest goal, but like seeing how far you can get might be laying that dildo out next to you and then playing with some fingers. And like you still achieved the goal in that sense. You didn't like come to a point of failure and be like, oh, I guess not tonight. Like you explored and that was the plan.
Totally.
So I'm a big fan of that, of like having a plan B or having a goal that is a no fail goal.
Like I distinguish like an intention versus a expectation. Like the intention is just like this loose idea of what could happen that you both would like, and an expectation has like a specific script to it.
Yeah.
And just have the intention versus the expectation.
Totally.
Yeah. Nice. They said, good point. Thank you. Liberators on hand are great as well. Yeah. Liberators, in case you're like, what is that? It's like this awesome material that is a branded throw that you can put for awesome, sexy messes and just pop them into the washer. They're like velvety and they're a moisture barrier between you and the bed. So they're great for squirting or Nuru play or anything that you're like, let's let it rip and get like real wild. Yeah. It's so that you don't have to change your bed sheets after, or you can travel with the Liberator. I don't know.
They do have a travel size one. They make a little mini.
I think that is like the way that I want to go with a Liberator pad. Just like this little kind of pad that you can just put it in the washer.
Some of us cheapskates just get puppy pads, and
that's what I've had.
They're not great, like not great for the environment. That's real because they're disposable, but like in a pinch, you know.
Well, I got the rewashable incontinence pads, which is not really like that sexy.
For sure. It had a full size, like the sheets you can get for incontinence. Like they're almost awesome, but then they have this like little crinkle to them that you can just never quite get away from. And you're like, man, that's not the sound, but okay.
I love that. Just to clear things up, I didn't get the incontinence pads for anal play necessarily. I was sick of doing like full bed change after squirting and ruining a mattress, and wanted something easy and portable and whatever. They don't make incontinence pads in the sexy way like Liberators do, you know.
Liberators really got the market on the sexy incontinence pad for sure.
Could you tell us an experience that you've had that like with this subject that was like, oh my gosh, that was epic?
If
there's one there.
Well, there was, so just like an interesting experience. I have two thoughts. So, one was the first and only time that I have anally fisted someone. So just to hybridize what we were just talking about. And it was at one of the first real play parties I ever went to when I was like a beginner sex educator. And it was a wild time. I was at a conference. Sorry, everyone who's not a sex educator. This is what we do at our conferences. I went to a play party and I was pretty firm in my boundaries of that I wasn't fluid sharing with anyone. I was just like there to explore. And I happened to like get chatting with someone who was a really experienced educator and experienced bottom who was like, I would love to try this with you. I know you know a lot about anal sex and butts, and it was a great safe space for me as a new top in that time to like have them kind of talk me through it and be able to work together on that, and learned a lot. It was really cool. So that really was like, it's good. That was a long time ago now, but a cool experience. And then like something that I just think is so a magical thing about anal sex. At this time, I am in a wonderful, thrilling monogamous relationship with a woman. And I just think that lesbian anal play is like the holy grail of sex in so many ways. I just think it is like this beautiful queering of all of the things we were taught about sex as youth, and like sex for reproduction, and like an evolutionary sex ed of like why people of different genders are attracted to what they are attracted to. Like people, like two female identified people, like choosing to participate in anal sex together, like has such a, like you have to really want it. There's no like, evolutionary or biological or reproductive reason. Like you have to really decide to go for it. And there's something about that I think is like so hot and so beautiful. So that in general, I think is a big thing.
I love that. That made me wonder, like, of the people that I know that, and I'm included in this, the people, including myself, that are like, that it's like a mission, like that they want to check that box. And like you're saying, there is no real biological interest besides like the interest itself. And I guess I keep forgetting that there's like it's a whole pleasure center in there. No wonder we're interested. It's like uncharted. It's an uncharted territory that we want to explore and understand.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, I think there's something kind of freeing about anal play too, because it's not quite as prescriptive as other kinds of sex, like especially a really straight and reproductive view of PIV sex, of like, you know, there are so many examples out there in the media and even in our sex ed as kids of like, what, or maybe as youth, young adults, of like what sex is and how it's supposed to go. And though we now have a lot of anal sex in porn, which maybe is an advanced example of how some people choose to play anally, but like there isn't as much of a how-to and a like, this is what it's supposed to look like and this is how it's supposed to go. And like, that's freeing. We get to like make it up as we go and play for ourselves. And I think that's kind of fun.
I agree. Like when I wanted to learn about it, I like had to do some deep study, and mainly that meant that I looked on the internet and I ended up watching this video on porn stars talking about what they do to prep for anal play scenes. And I was like, I'm going to do exactly what they say, because up until that point, I had only been able to enjoy like play on the outside, not on the inside, or like full penetration. And so some of the things that they mentioned is that like I went out to a store and got like a lube shooter, because I was like, all right, we're going to get lube up in there high.
In there. Yeah.
And then also to like wear a butt plug for like a while before you decide to play, if you need help with like relaxing those muscles.
Totally.
Which I was like, oh my gosh, easy, I can do that. And then that was basically it. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite butt plug type situation or butt plug that you recommend to people?
I don't. I just recommend any kind that has an end on it. That's important to know. I have always wanted the kind that has a little sparkly, huge, like troll butt. You know, like the troll belly button, but for your butt, that are metal. But I don't have a specific favorite. Do you?
You know, it depends on the purpose. Tell
me more.
You know, for like what you were saying of sort of anal sex prep and wearing something to help the muscles relax, like, so if you're looking at the anatomy of a butt plug, you have the like ball on the plug, the like main insertable shape, and then you have your neck, and then you have your base. And so some butt plugs have like a really big insertable bit, and then the neck is really narrow and the base is big. Those are great for like wearing during sex. Those are some of my favorite, like the Enjoy Pure plugs, I'd say are my favorite butt plugs and probably most highly recommended. But if I were wearing a plug to like warm up for insertion and penetration.
Mhm.
The neck on those is so small that it's not going to do a whole lot for the like muscles around the opening and the internal and external sphincter to get some time to chill out and open. So I'd probably go with something that had a little bit of a wider neck. Like
Genius.
so things like the ones I have in my mind are the company Fuse, F-U-Z. They make a line of pleasure plugs that are silicone and they're really soft and they go from a small to an extra large. And they are like kind of conical and then have a little bit thicker stem. So something like that is probably better for like prepping for sex.
So you can graduate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Someone said, can we cover how to be more aware of when anal might be more messy and or how to plan for less messy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to cover that now?
What's that?
You want to cover that now?
Sure. Why not?
In real time. Yes. I mean, my answer to that would be good signs that your anal sex might be messy is if you feel like you have to poop. It's like a real sign there. So don't do that. If you feel like you have to poop before sex, do that. And then give it like just a little bit of time for things to settle. The little bit of rectal anatomy that I will impart with you tonight, because I can't stop myself, is that like when we enter an ass from the outside,
just like that.
Yes, with your whole self, we've made it. You're encountering someone's anus, their anal opening. The two rings of musculature, your external and internal sphincter. The external one is the one that we have a lot of active control over. We can be like, hey, chill out, or like, hey, pull tight. And that muscle listens to us as skeletal muscle. The internal sphincter is entirely tied to your feelings, to your physiological impulses, to anything that like naturally causes it to open and close. So you contracting or releasing your external sphincter will inform the internal sphincter, but it won't actually make it do the thing. So something to keep in mind. Then you have a couple inches of anal canal, a little like short anal canal, and then a long tube of rectum. And then you get into your sigmoid colon and the rest of your intestines through there. So there is quite a bit of landscape before you get into the area where like feces is stored. And that is something that a lot of sex educators say as a reason to make people not scared of any kind of mess, to be like, there's no poop stored in your rectum. It's all up in your sigmoid colon and beyond, which is true. However, every single person that has specifically asked me questions about anal sex has been like, great, I've been told that before, and yet still I've run into this issue. So like, what's wrong with me? And the answer is that nothing's wrong with you. It is like really normal, both from what I have learned and from what I've heard anecdotally. It is really normal to not fall into that category of like, excrement is only stored up higher than the rectum. There are plenty of reasons why you might have more hanging out down in your rectum, based on how recently you've eaten. If you have any kind of IBS, IBD, if even just like random stomach upset, or like depending on how recently you've had a bowel movement, what's left in there, like various residue going on. So like it is, we can hold both those things to be true, that it is not necessarily where it's stored, and it might be where you find some today. So like that can be a thing. But feeling like you are as cleaned out and fresh and ready to go as you can be, you probably won't run into a whole lot. If you are, I would say, right after a meal, like immediately after a meal, you might not feel the most sexy, but you are unlikely to run into any waste ready to come out of your body. But like an hour or two after, not necessarily ideal, because your body is like working through what it's digesting, and that's a natural process. So just start tracking perhaps how your digestion usually goes. Do a little digestion tracker, and you might get more confident in like your timing and how that should work for you. And then if you want to plan for it to be a little bit less messy, there are things like enemas out there. An enema is a way to clean out your lower bowel, like your rectum. If you are to buy one from the store, like a Fleet is a common brand of enema, I would definitely recommend you dump that out. So it might not even be worth buying one, but they are not very expensive, whatever. The stuff that those are filled with, they're a saline solution, but that's designed to have a contracting force on your bowel. It's more laxative. So if you just go ahead and squirt that up in there as is, you might end up with a cramping sensation or more release than you wanted. So like
good advice.
So if you are like, I want to have anal sex in like an hour, I'll give it a quick rinse out, and you put a stimulant laxative in there, it's likely to not feel like a sexy time for you for quite a while.
Oh gosh.
So, that's a good. Someone pointed out beats are great for timing your transit time. For sure. If you are into doing some bowel experiments,
wow,
colorful. See how long it takes.
They are
science going on. But yeah, so if you just dump out whatever was in that, or you get a reusable enema, like Shebop does sell an enema bulb that's silicone, but lots of other places sell them too. You can fill it with just like warm water, like body temperature water. If you just want to do like a little rinsey, standing up, like being over a tub or over a toilet and standing up and squirting some warm water in there, holding it in with your muscles until you feel like it needs to release, and then releasing it and doing that a few times is fine. If you want a deeper rinsey, there's all kinds of instructions on the internet about positions to take, how to do that. It just, once water gets up past your rectum through the curve in your colon, you are like in for the night doing a bowel clean out. So,
oh my gosh, I got a horror story about that one.
Oh no.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh, it's fine. That was the end of it. So just like, do your like little bit of bowel clean out, unless you are like curious about a colonic. Be intentional.
Yep. That's where my story starts, where my mom is very much into coffee enemas and has done them regularly for years. And so randomly one night I was like, I'm going to do that for the first time. I have all the things. And a coffee enema is meant to like go all the way up to reach your liver and stimulate your liver to release toxins. And I fully read the instructions wrong on the first try and let out all of the liquid into my body, which you're only supposed to do like half.
Nice.
And then the ironic thing is that somehow by the end of the night, I ended up at a kink club at the end of the night. And I remember sitting back, like watching some kind of scene happen, and a friend of mine come up to me and they'd be like, oh, they said, yeah, you're not like the type that's going to really play right now. And I was like, if you only knew, because when you do an enema that's like deeper, you need to stay in for the night. And I really had no idea. And so I ended up at the club, just being like, there's no play happening. There is just observation and like managing my breath.
We're just trying. Which is your great horror story. It's not necessarily wrong to do. Some people like love the feeling for sure. If you are going to do like a big rinse, I would definitely, even a small rinse, I would not recommend doing that more than once a week. Your ass has its own little biome going on, not quite the same as like the inside of a vagina, but it does have its own, like mucus situation going on through your rectum. And if you're like rinsing it, especially if there's anything in your enema other than water, you might be stripping that mucus faster than your body can regenerate it. So be careful with that. Keep your enemas minimal, and like also minimal in terms of their depth. I would also, my last thing about that would just be like, some other people even just take like a gently soaped finger and rub right around the anal opening, and give it like a nice warm wipe down there. If you're just worried about kind of like the day sitting on your ass and like you just want to give it a little freshen up, that's totally legit. Sticking like the tip of a finger just around the anal opening, clean it right up. you know?
How many people that are watching this, like, have you noticed from this little segment of questioning that, like, your butt has been, like, doing things? Like, while Gretchen is talking,
Ooh, it's talking about me.
like, it's in the conversation. I'm just saying. Someone else said, since it's my favorite act and I've heard many alternate opinions, is unprotected analingus safe with a fluid bonded partner? Or should things like dental dams, female condoms, or even thin plastic wrap always be used regardless?
I have thoughts. My thoughts are that analingus is great. And the idea of safety, it's, I think in this sense, a personal preference thing. Like, there is a slight chance that you will get some kind of fecal residue in your mouth. I actually did like a lot of research on this once upon a time. And specifically, what I found in my research was that your other people's feces might make you sick. Your own feces, interestingly, very unlikely to make you sick, according to the CDC. So, like, go ahead and lick your own ass. If you can. But it's really unlikely with like the small amount, especially if you and your partner are like taking a little bit of moment to be like, I'm gonna just freshen up and, you know, give things a little washcloth wipe down there. It's unlikely that you will get any amount of fecal matter in your mouth that would be dangerous to you, especially like if you are, like you mentioned, already fluid bonded with that partner. You've already accepted a certain level of risk of just like body to body sharing. For myself, I would include unprotected analingus in my fluid bonding with a partner. You absolutely get to make that choice. And if it feels safer and better for you to use a barrier, awesome. Absolutely use a barrier. But I would say, like, for myself and my own boundaries, I would include that in my fluid bonding.
Awesome. I love that.
The one thing I will add to that, just for safety wise, if you are someone that has a lot of scruff on your face, that might be a second reason to choose using a barrier over not, because that tissue is really sensitive. It's not necessarily a must, but just something to think about. If you're going to be really scratching up the surface, you might want to use extra lube or use a barrier, or something that you can do to protect the skin a little bit.
Such good information. Didn't even think of that, of like this, the way a cat's tongue feels on someone's face when they haven't shaved.
Yeah.
Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Awesome. I'm curious. We've talked about a lot of advice. Ooh, I see another one. My concern is when his penis accidentally travels from anus to vagina. That's definitely something like with a condom, to switch condoms or to take a little pause. Even fingers, like I've had to be the one that's like, hey, what finger is that? Like, wait.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine gifted me finger condoms, which she was like, this is incredible for anal play because you just slip it off and it's done.
Yeah.
So
that's nice.
I totally hear that. Yeah,
for sure. That is a real concern. And just worth saying that, even if you might already know, worth saying, like, vagina to ass, generally all right, unless you have like a skin that's super sensitive to acid or things like that. Like, you might find a little bit of irritation in your skin from whatever vaginal pH you might have going on, but it's not going to be dangerous. But the other direction, going from ass to pussy, is a dangerous time for a vagina. That little biome is very secure in there and doesn't like new things being introduced to it. And the amount of bacteria you have in your ass just doesn't match up with the bacteria in a vagina. So yeah, always a good time to call pause. You don't need to, like, if something is an accident, like, whatever, accidents happen, but it's not a thing to just be like, well, it's already happening, so we're just going to continue this. Like, that is a time to definitely be like, cool, we're going to pause, we're going to rinse off here, and then like choose how we're going to continue. If we're going to continue with vaginal sex, we need to wash this up. If we're going to continue with anal sex, I'm going to take a second to like cool down, make sure that my vagina is happy. Just like it's worth the 2 minutes of recalibration.
For sure. Yeah. Yep. Oh, I love this. Softening the lips of your mouth. What does that say? Orbicularis oris. Is that like the anatomy term? Will relax your anus sometimes.
Yeah.
Relaxing your lips.
Cool.
Here we go.
Yeah, we're going to try it. I'm into it.
Maybe that's like when your pre-warm-up is this. It's just shake face.
Yeah. Great, no warm up.
Oh, I love that. Okay, is there any other advice that you have for anyone that's like totally into this, wanting to try this? Anything else for people that have never done it before?
Yes. I would say a main thing, just like to the mess question and even to this like safety question and wanting to do the things that keep your own body safe. Like a big thing that I wish that I'd known when I was younger is that if you can't trust someone to handle your body not working the way you expected, or a natural substance that comes out of your body, or a pain response, like if you can't trust someone with those basic facts of your body, then they don't deserve to have your ass. Like, you know, none of us like embarrassment. None of us like surprises that we don't expect or that go against like our version of what's sexy. But like in partnership and in sexual partnership, like it's just, that is something that I hold so dear to myself now, that I get to pick what I do with people. And I get to, like, something really beautiful about anal sex is how many doors it opens and like how many vulnerabilities it asks of me and how much I get to explore my body and its own individual response at that time. And I now in my life choose to only share that kind of vulnerable experience with partners who I really trust to be in that experience with me. And I would say like, that's like, really think about that. If you haven't tried this before and you want to try, like explore that. What do you feel safe? What feels like a good first try for you? And who does that feel safe to do that with? You know, like, is it a little bit of external play and that feels awesome and in control? Great. Start there. Like, and that's, I think, kind of pulls together all of the things with not being goal oriented, not setting yourself up to fail, and trusting your partner. If you have a partner you can choose to trust.
Amazing. Love that.
Ooh, I got a comment here. Any good toy recommendations for someone who would like to play with their own prostate? If only I were more flexible, but I'm not. Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of good toys out there for prostate play. As Jessie mentioned before, for sure, like an important thing to remember, anything you put in your butt, you want to have a flared base on it, because the butt, just that long tube of rectum, 8 to 9 inches of rectum is a long way for something to go, with strong contractile muscles at the end of it. But so like the world is kind of your oyster. For prostate play, we're looking at prostates being any amount of inches, like it really varies person to person, but a few inches into the rectum back towards someone's navel, so on the anterior wall of a rectum. And a lot of people like a kind of stimulation on a prostate that is like a rubbing or pressing or moving over it. So something like on the firmer side and something that's kind of curved is often where people will go. So if you're like really wanting to deep dive and explore, the Enjoy, who makes the Pure Plugs I mentioned before, the stainless steel toys, they make a cool toy called the Fun Wand. It's an S-shaped stainless steel toy. So it doesn't have a specific base on it, but it has a long, heavy curve that's designed so that it is very, very unlikely to like snake up into your body.
That sounds scary.
So something like that can be really awesome at digging it out. if you are interested in something that is like a little less intense, the whole line of enemas toys, they are super Googleable. They make a bunch of different toys of different sizes and firmness. Some are silicone, some are hard plastic, a little bit cheaper, and have a big base to give some perineal stimulation, but like firm and designed to poke towards a prostate and give some rubbing that way. So recommend it. Yeah.
I love the Enjoy brand because there's something about steel that like warming it up feels incredible in that area. And I just really like that it's like a lifetime investment. Like as long as you don't lose it, it is a sex toy that will be with you forever.
True.
The Enjoy wand that I have, I sometimes think of it as a weapon if I need it to be.
Totally.
It's apocalyptic proof.
Yeah.
And that creates like a sound mind for me.
Yeah. Your Enjoy will be with you forever.
Yeah. I just thought of a couple of things that I wish I would have known through my discovery.
Yeah.
One of which is that like if to follow the pleasure, which seems so simple and obvious, but if you are wanting to have anal sex and the thing that feels good, if you're wanting to have penetrative anal sex and the thing that feels good is the rimming, the outside, and then what becomes like painful becomes the insertion, then just play with what feels good. Like it's kind of the similar warm up. There needs to be warm up for there to be any kind of insertion. And when those muscles relax, that means that you're fully warmed up. And if you're not relaxed, then no pass go, no enter, that kind of thing. Another, what were you going to say?
Oh, I just think that it's great advice to follow the pleasure, like in any kind of sex. But I think especially when we have a like this, so many people have an end goal of what they think anal sex should look like.
Right.
Instead of being like, this feels good, so I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like following the yellow brick road of pleasure will eventually allow those muscles to relax.
Yeah.
For more. Another thing that I saw from a class that I took was that the person that was receiving was in charge of their insertion, meaning if there was a giver, the giver had gloves on and the giver just created a little knuckle and just rubbed and caressed with lube and warmed up that area, that they didn't apply any pressure. And when the person that was receiving was ready, they would begin to back themselves into the finger.
Yeah.
And that created a sound mind for the person that was receiving because they got to choose. And they could go at their own pace, which I think that can be sometimes hard to navigate of like, whose pace are we going at? Like my mind, my body, the person that I'm with, my excitement, all those things.
For sure. That is a great thing to mention, to think about like the receiver being in charge of the timing and of if there is penetration at all and when it happens. And like that there are that I think muscularly it also helps because interestingly, like to receive anal penetration, if you're thinking about pulling in, you're tightening the muscles. And so if you're backing up on something, like you're more likely to push out your muscles. And that is really helpful for opening the opening. Right. So being able to push back against something and push towards it with your own physical body and with the muscles of your sphincters can be super helpful for accommodating that first little bit of penetration. So double whammy of good idea to let the receiver do that.
Awesome. I see someone say, my Enjoy plugs are hands down the best toys I've ever bought. Yeah. Love that.
They're great.
Yeah. Are there any potential turnoffs that you can think of? Oh, are you pulling out yours out of the drawer?
That's right.
Yes.
Benefit of being in my bedroom.
Okay, I'll grab mine too.
For people who are wondering what the Enjoy plugs look like, they look like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yay.
They're stainless steel butt plugs. And this is also what I was talking about with like that insertable bit being really wide and the neck being really narrow. It makes them super comfortable to just wear around. Versus like something that has a thicker neck might be better at wearing for like warming that muscle up and letting it relax a bit, because the muscles will relax back to almost their initial state back around the neck then.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can't really sit down in that, right? Like,
It depends on how big your butt cheeks are. I
yeah.
can sit down in it because I have big old booty, but other people cannot.
Yeah. This is the Enjoy wand that I was talking about. It feels like a boomerang to me. That's why I think it's the apocalyptic part. Sometimes you play like I'm like, hello.
Yeah.
I'm playing telephone with it. And I just love that you can warm it up because nothing in my mind feels better than like warm metal. So nice.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Tis the season for warm metal for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Is there anything else that you feel like if you have questions, please let us know any lingering questions or share what you learned here. If you're like, oh, haven't ever heard that, definitely tagging that in my mind, put it into the chat so that other people can hear what you learned and maybe kind of bump an insight too.
I guess one just like hot tip for people that are doing penetrative anal play. Okay, I have actually two hot tips. One's about external and one's about internal. So let's go external first. Something that is one of my favorite things from my blowjob class. When people start to ask about anal play and be like, I've heard a lot of people like some butt stuff during blowjobs, but like, do I just stick something in there? Like, there is a great way of like the in-between of providing someone anal stimulation during other play without just going straight for penetration. And one of my favorite ways to do that is to slide a hand between someone's butt cheeks with this portion of your thumb, like with the side of your thumb and your palm, like the meat of your thumb, and like rubbing up into someone's anus with this broad surface. So like there's no way that this will accidentally penetrate someone if you're using like the base of your palm. But you can offer a lot of broad spread stimulation up into some really tender areas and get those nerves going without any of that sort of like is penetration going to happen? Like, do I have to be prepared? And the muscles kind of go on. You can just relax with like a real broad sensation and you don't have to use any like skills or think about it very much. It's just like giving a little massage. Often a good place to start. And then for insertion, especially if you're using penetration with a strap-on or a biocock, like if you are used to a different kind of penetration, like vaginal penetration, or you're not very used to penetrating someone at all, best practice is to kind of go in and stay put rather than immediately be like, I have achieved penetration, now I'm going to be thrusting. The asses usually take quite a while to warm up to thrusting, and sometimes that's not what an ass wants at all. Like pretty often people don't want thrusting at all. So starting like you get in there and then just kind of settle and use that like receiver led motion to see if they want some thrusting, to see if they want some movement, and don't push the thrusting. I know there's been like lots of great anal experiences out there, including penetration, just involve bodies kind of squishing together and keeping that motion really small. So, small motion first.
Yay, love that. Someone said condom or bear with partner, and I'm not quite sure what they're asking. Can you clarify that? Are you asking like, is it best to use a condom or to go bear with a partner with anal sex first? Just curious.
I mean, my thoughts on that are like, it's totally up to you and your partner and your own safety stuff. Like, I do know people who choose to use condoms over not using condoms, over going skin to skin, even if they're fluid bonded. One, because of cleanliness stuff, like condoms are a really easy cleanup, which is great. And also because condoms are often pre-lubricated and they don't soak in your lube, the same as like drier skin or really any skin will over time soak your lube in. So using a condom can be a great way to have a barrier for safety reasons, but to also have a barrier, keep your lube on the outside of it, and for easy cleanup. So I would say like perhaps more people choose to use condoms for anal sex than otherwise, but totally up to you and your own safety and communication you've had with your partner ahead of time.
Love that. It's such a great answer. Awesome. I don't see any other questions. So thank you so much, Gretchen. This was so great. I loved that you geeked out with anatomy. It really
Anytime.
The first time that I was like, Jessie, you could be into anatomy. If it was about sex.
If it's about rectums, why not?
Yeah, it's helpful to know all that. Will you tell people how they can reach you if they want to take a class from you or if they want to know more?
Yes. I was telling Jessie before class, I am kind of hard to reach on the internet right now, unfortunately. I do have a website, it's gretchenlee.org, but if you go there, don't expect much. We have a new website coming hopefully in the new year. But I am, my next project is to work on a newsletter and mailing list so that folks can keep up with what I am doing. So I do teach lots of fun stuff, and I'm also involved in lots of fun sex ed projects. So if you want to pre-sign up for my newsletter, you are more than welcome to do that. And you can use the contact me on my website. That does go directly to me. So if there's a question for me or you want to get on my newsletter or whatever else, feel free to just reach me there. It's at gretchenlee.org.
Awesome. Thank you. Yay. Yay. I see so many. Thank you so much. For my classes this week, I am teaching for Shebop virtually, and that'll be on sex and sensuality for the super sensitive. That's for anyone that feels like they're highly sensitive or they have a difficult time navigating sex because of the sensitivity level just being so much. I help teach you how to guide that process more easily, to understand yourself better, and to feel like a highly sensitive badass in bed. So that'll be Thursday. You can find out information or buy the tickets for that at sheboptheshop.com/events. I'll put a link in our group if you feel like joining. Maybe Gretchen, will you be there too?
Yeah.
Are you hosting?
I'll be there tomorrow.
Yay!
You'll see us both again in less than 24 hours.
Awesome. Okay, great. And when you join any of my classes that I teach, you get a complimentary possibility call where we're going to talk about what you want for your sex life, what might be in the way, and brainstorm ways for you to get exactly what you want. So that's some incentive to join classes, is like you get more concentrated time with me. Okay. Thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you so much, Gretchen Lee, for just sharing your brilliance and your anatomy geekery and toy geekery and all of that.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Okay, goodbye, everybody. We're going to log off.
Bye, folks. Good night.
Let's see.